beautiful light beams, and welcome to another episode with me, Lena, at the State of Flow podcast. I'm super excited to be here once more and to have you guys here. And so today I would like to focus on just telling you a little bit more about the Elevate Your State webinar that I've run this morning with a bunch of amazing, beautiful humans. It was a live webinar, and this morning was essentially just the initial launch, and it will be available, the replay will be available for an entire while for all of you to get your hands on if you feel like you're at a point where you want and need to elevate your state in one way or another in order to attract in more happiness, more health, more joy, more success, more alignment, more abundance into your life, and you just feel like you're on a plateau somewhere, you're already doing all the right things, or you're struggling to recognize your triggers or really understand your body's and mind signals in order to make the things that are right for you get you off the plateau and allow you to move up that upward spiral of personal growth and elevate and attract in all those things that you would like to have in your life and lead your life with. And so it's been an amazing experience. I love sharing about it. As you all know, I'm all about this whole holistic, living your best life, amplifying your life, and reconnecting back to your natural rhythms kind of way of living. And so I thought that today, I'm going to try to keep this episode relatively short, but see how we go. But I want to focus on one of the core themes that I talked about in this webinar, which is this really foundational concept of the 6 stages of disease according to Ayurveda, and how it relates, why it's important, and why it's really impactful when it comes to recognizing our triggers and calling ourselves out and stop missing the point and actually scratching the curve when it's still easy, and how it relates to our Western attitudes and things. I think it's just such an incredibly wholesome, amazing, interesting concept that I think we should all become aware of, because it is something that's not commonly being represented or taken care of or even considered in the West at all, unfortunately. And so first up, a disclaimer. Who knows me might know I was actually going to become a doctor before I became a hippie doctor, aka an Ayurvedic practitioner and integrative nutrition health coach, a yoga therapist, a somatic body worker, and so forth. I was going to become a surgeon, and I did internships in hospitals with veterinarians and so forth. And so please take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm not trying to put a downer onto Western medicine or totally try to debunk anything, because Western medicine absolutely has its place. There's incredible things that can be done, but the difference between Western medicine and therefore our Western attitude, because that is our main medical system and everything else we classify as alternative health, and it might not even be recognized. So therefore it plays a major role in our social conditioning and how we think about health, how we connect to health, and therefore how we connect to our own minds and bodies. And that's actually quite different too in the West. So a major difference between Western medicine and Ayurveda is that Ayurveda is a preventative natural medicine that tackles disease at the very root cause, while Western medicine unfortunately comes in a little bit too late and works on the symptoms. It's a bit of a band-aid approach where we just cover up things that are currently acutely flare up, but we don't necessarily really approach the root cause with traditional Western medicine, which is a shame. Like if you think of things like removals of placentas of the uterus and ovaries and the appendix, that's so common. There's statistics saying that it's 60% of women who by the time they are 60 have had their uterus or their ovaries or both removed. And that just reflects this attitude in the West of we have this general, often unconscious underlying belief system of that our bodies are flawed. And that's a fundamentally really harmful belief, to be honest, because what it does is it unconsciously makes us declare war with our own bodies and minds and our own natural rhythms. And I'm all about holistic detoxification and tuning back into your rhythms and creating your flow state. And as the name says, flow state comes from going with the flow, finding your flow, and it's the opposite of pushing against the stream. And so if you have this attitude towards your body of seeing it as a source of pain and suffering and victimize yourself, and I find women's health is always an incredible example for it, because there's so many women out there who are just completely disconnected from their periods and or fertility and or menopause or perimenopause and so forth. And I was one of those women when I was young. I had contraception pills, and then eventually the coil, whatever the other name is for that, from when I was 13, because I was trying to cover up my symptoms. I obviously didn't know better. I learned from my mom, who lovingly thought she was making the right decision for me, or encouraging me for the right decision, because she didn't know better. But essentially, I was at war with my femininity from the very start. As soon as I got my period, I thought, at first you're kind of excited because it's this kind of initiation into womanhood. But then I used to get really bad symptoms with it, like pains and migraines, and used to get sent home from school and just bleed, like overflow. There was so... it just brought up a lot of symptoms and discomforts and outbreaks and things. And so that made me think, because I didn't know any better, and who I surrounded myself with didn't know any better either, that, it is flawed. It's just this massive inconvenience that the female body experiences every month, unfortunately. Like that, and if you think about it, there is no natural being that's naturally coming into this world, like as an entire race or species, that is flawed. I know, obviously, we know there is disability going on, a mutation for different reasons and so forth, but I'm talking about an entire species. So why the hell would the female body, or the male as such, with other examples, be naturally flawed, But we get brought up with thinking that way quite often. I think periods are a great example. And then really it takes us a lot to realize, like it took me years to realize and actually get off all artificial contraception stuff, and I started to balance my hormones and my periods, and I love my cycle now, and I have a way deeper and more in tune and connected relationship with my body and an appreciation for it, and have finally realized that the symptoms that I had back then that were so bad were my body's signals letting me know that something is really, really off. And instead of choosing to listen to them and recognizing them as the messenger, as the alarm bell that's ringing because there is a fire, instead of going to attend to the fire and deal with it. Sorry, I get a bit of a word thing going on. I just tried to turn the alarm bells off and took the battery out of the smoke alarm kind of thing, with contraception pills and with the coil and invasive therapies like that. And so in the end, all we do with that is shooting the messenger. I think, like I said, the period example is a very, very common thing for women, and I'm sure many of you can resonate with that, but it translates into any other aspects as well. It's the same with, appendixes being taken out, or tonsils being taken out, and Western medicine says, well, you don't really need them, they don't really have a point, or gallbladder operations and removal, and Western medicine thinks like, oh, the body can go on without it. Yeah, we can, we're not gonna die, you're gonna survive, you'll be fine. But it is there for a reason. Nature does not do such things as placing something somewhere for no reason at all. Everything in nature has integrity, everything in nature works in synergy, and everything is there for a reason, be it an organ or be it a certain food at a certain time of the year to nourish your body in an adequate way. So that's obviously what's conditioning us in the West. Like I mentioned, we kind of put on band-aids when the smoke alarm is going off hardcore, and really mistaking it for the annoyance itself and an inconvenience and so forth, instead of realizing that these symptoms, all our symptoms, no matter if they're mental, if they're physical or otherwise, even environmental, like if you have toxic relationships and things, they are all just messengers of that something is going wrong and you need to go and attend to it. There's this beautiful quote, which is, You have to listen to your body's whispers so you never have to hear it scream. And this is what Ayurveda is onto, and that's the 6 stages of disease. So let us go through the 6 stages of disease, and you'll probably be surprised by what Ayurveda classifies as disease, because in the West we tend to normalize a lot of things, and a lot of things just become so chronic and we just keep up with it. And because we see our body as the source of like suffering or annoyance, we're like, well, my body is just freaking against me. But you know, I've had chronic back pain for 10 years and it is what it is, and just gets easier. Just kind of keep going and don't worry about it. And so we desensitize ourselves. The more we repress those natural urges in that sense, the more we desensitize ourselves to the signals our bodies, when I say body, I mean the entirety of us, body, mind, soul, spirit, everything. We desensitize ourselves to our body's signals of that something is wrong. And so the more we desensitize ourselves, the more this iceberg can grow under the surface without us knowing, because we never look under. All right, so let's get into the 6 stages. Number 1, which is called Kaliyah in Sanskrit. Don't worry about the Sanskrit names if you're not already into those kind of realms. It'll be just confusing. But I just want to mention. And Kaliyah is accumulation. That's the first stage of disease. And so that would be an accumulation of little symptoms, things like feeling sluggish or having a sluggish digestion, gas and smelly gas, lethargy, exhaustion, heaviness, whether it's feeling mentally heavy or physically, irritability, body odor or smelly excrements. And so in this one, that's all stuff I went through in the webinar today, and you will have access to it via the replay as well. Obviously it was a 1.5 hour plus webinar, so we are just going to get into little snippets of it. Speaking of smelly excrements and waste products, we all know that poo and sweat and things can obviously be smelly. By the way, there's no shame in talking about any kind of waste products in Ayurveda. In fact, it's encouraged, because our waste obviously is a waste of what's going on in our body. So it gives us a huge insight into our mental and physical state, and where there might be balance or imbalance and how we need to tweak it. So there's actually a lot of information you can get from the quality of your stool, your urine, your sweat and so forth. And so we all know that stool obviously is smelly, but there's a difference between normal kind of poo, healthy poo smell, and like a really almost rancid, sour, really intense off kind of feces smell. And so that's already an imbalance. That's the first stage of disease, like how your body smells and looks and feels. Other things are signs of acidity. So it can be inflammation on the skin, it can be skin rashes, it can be inflammation in your gut. So if you have chronic diarrhea, it can be having acid reflux, which can actually be too much or too little acidity. Cramps, abdominal distension or cramps over the body anywhere, coldness, constipation, diarrhea, I said, bloating, anxiety, tension, insomnia, coldness, etc. All these symptoms like that. You might actually now think, well, I'm kind of feeling that all the time. Isn't that normal? No, it's actually not. So many of us think it's normal, but the reality is that we just normalize all of these symptoms because we push against the flow, and so we don't recognize them as being messengers, because that's what they are, of what's going on underneath. It's like our body screaming, well, not quite yet screaming because it gets worse, but trying to tell us, hey, look, there's something going really wrong in here. Can we please fix this? And that's the body's language, the only language in which it knows how to reach us. And so all these symptoms we normalize are not normal. Unfortunately, they are just really common, which makes us think that they're normal, and which makes also, unfortunately, a lot of doctors of Western medicine think that they are normal. You might go into a traditional GP's office with those imbalances that are just listed, like lethargy or just feeling mentally heavier, and or having indigestion stuff and bloating, and they'll be like, oh, that's just normal, you're like a woman in like at 35, these are just normal symptoms most people get that are in this age bracket and of your gender kind of thing, just go home and get on with it. And that's because they get those normalized stats from statistics, which shows that this many women in this kind of age show those kind of symptoms, but that still doesn't mean it's normal, because what is actually normal, like we said, nothing comes to this earth intentionally disabled as a whole species. There's no sense in it. What is normal is to be fully functional, healthy, with all your systems being in balance, vibrant, and functioning smoothly. That's our natural state. And then all our social conditioning comes in, and all the food we eat, and all the environmental toxins we are exposed to, and all our limited beliefs, and all those things that keep coming in and pouring down onto us, and they eventually build up the toxicity level in our body, bringing things out of balance. But it's not our natural state. It's only, unfortunately, too common. So from this first state, accumulation, you're moving into the second stage of disease, which is aggravation, or prakopa in Sanskrit. So aggravation means those symptoms you already talked about just then, just getting worse. So this little bit of bloating, or this little bit of having a rough throat, is turning into more of a cough. The bloating is turning into almost a swelling of your body, of your belly, and it doesn't go back. Cramping becomes so constant that you think it's your new normal. So just this aggravation of all the symptoms that have already shown in stage number 1. Then stage number 3 is prasara, which is the spreading stage. So that's when those symptoms have essentially reached their maximum capacity, and they start to cross a threshold in that certain area. So say if it starts off with, gasiness, that's obviously in your GI tract, and it remains untreated in that first stage, and it remains untreated in that second stage of aggravation, then it starts to spread from this initial area of the symptom. It starts to hit this threshold and basically overflow and leak into other areas of your body and other parts of your systems. And so usually it will spill over. It can also spill over into your mind. Okay. And so from there, due to that spilling, we move into stage 4, which is the relocation stage, or sthana samsraya. And so that's basically when, after spilling and leaking into other body systems, parts, or your mind, those symptoms settle in that new home site, which usually is an area of weakness unique to you, like not a general, race specific weakness necessarily, but as we know, we are all impacted by our own environment and our own foods and our own this and that, so it can be unique to you. So it will settle in an area of your personal weakness, physically or psychologically, or both, or in another area of the associated dosha, talking Ayurvedic terms here, so your mind, body constitution, your vata, pitta, or kapha. And so that depends on the nature of your initial symptoms. So if you had, for example, vata symptoms, and you leave them untreated throughout stage 1, 2, 3, and then it's relocating into stage 4 of disease, it will likely move, if not into an area of weakness, it will move into another home site of vata dosha in your body, like for example into your pelvic region, or eventually vata rises up into your head. That's also where we start to intellectualize our symptoms, and that's where things can just start to get quite chronic and difficult, and obviously also impact your mental health. Stage number 5 of disease and pathology is the manifestation phase, vyakti. And so that's when all these symptoms finally start to manifest into a now identifiable and, in the West, labeled and recognized disease. For example, this little tingle in your throat and this little restriction in breathing in stage 1 that then turned into a bit more of a cough and throat aggravation in stage 2, and then it started spreading in stage 3, and then it started relocating in stage 4. And so now in stage 5 that it's manifesting, it's becoming asthma. Or this little bit of acidity that you had in your stomach and indigestion and gas first, that then really exploded, and that then went right down into your small intestines and through your colon and stuff. And then you still left it untreated, and it spread and relocated, and now it manifested as leaky gut syndrome or irritable bowel syndrome, or you name it. It's the same process with any kind of disease. Any. So once we've reached this manifestation phase, this disease now is often set. It's set in place, and it can become really, really, really difficult to cure it. And then your stage 6 is the expression of unique characteristics of this disease called Veda. So once this disease is fixed at a site, the disease takes on a life of its own. And it may become a chronic thing, and it may potentially even become incurable. So that's Ayurveda's take on the 6 stages of disease. Now, I don't think it's a surprise that Western medicine does not recognize yet those 6 stages of disease. Instead, where Western medicine comes in, remember we talked about Ayurveda having a preventative approach, while Western medicine has a more kind of band-aid approach, and that is fixing the symptoms. That is because Western medicine literally comes in at stage 4 of disease. Stage 4, the earliest. So there's 3 entire stages before stage 4 in which disease already not only exists, but spreads and develops and strengthens and really nestles in before Western medicine actually comes to recognizing it and deciding to do something about it. Again, do remember, I'm not putting it down onto Western medicine, because there will always be cases where people do, for whatever reason, just go through the first few stages without knowing, or that those stages, for whatever reason, accelerate really fast, and they do lead into chronic disease through genetic makeup and so forth. And that's where Western medicine will be the primary healing approach, because Ayurveda, we kind of didn't play our cards right when it came to preventing things early, or we just couldn't due to whatever circumstances. So it does have its place. The problem is just that, the West recognizes it too late, and there's so much more healing potential in preventing things rather than, popping in at stage 4 or 5 when something has become a manifested disease that's now so much harder to cure. And, I think, I wanted to share this in this podcast episode. I think it's a really, really profound and interesting piece of information, because it also shows you, if you go back to, stage 6 is really the full-blown expression of a hectic, often chronic or incurable disease. And the start of that, which was stage 1, which is simply accumulation of feelings, right? Just of feelings in your body. And so I just want to kind of raise awareness around that with this podcast episode, and encourage you to really tune in with your bodies again, to really nurture this body-mind connection, to cultivate more mind-body awareness, and to really embody, to live your daily life from an embodied place, and from a place of inner anchoring, where you check in with yourself, with your physical body, with your mind, with your emotional state, and see, hey, how are we going? And where you start to befriend your body and befriend your symptoms, and whenever any discomforts are coming up, where you realize, whoa, hang on, buddy. Thank you actually for letting me know. Thank you for showing me that something is off in my body. Now that I've heard it, I can go and try figure out what's going on and rebalance myself. It's really important that we start to see our symptoms as messengers. Don't shoot the messenger. All right, beautiful light beams. So I hope this was helpful. I could keep talking about this for hours and hours. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, I mentioned my Elevate Your State free webinar, which got released today. So it will be available for anyone at any time of your convenience. You have lifetime access to those materials when you sign up via my website, www.elevatemindbodythrive.com, as well as I'll be putting the direct link to the webinar sign up into the show notes. You always find the complete show notes of this podcast also on my website, which is linked. And all that's required is your email address. You gain free access. The access link and things should be in your email inbox within 15 minutes. There is an accompanying worksheet that goes with this webinar that really allows you to make the most out of the material and dive right into your own experience and unravel what are your symptoms right now, and what areas of your life do you need a little bit of tweaking and more alignment? How can you recognize that? How can you get there? What action steps can you take? How can you develop healthy consistency in order to make sure you're really creating this long-term sustainable positive change, which we all deserve and which we also all have access to if we choose to tune inside and do our inner work. It's so amazing what a potential we have. And it all comes down to relearning to listen what our bodies and minds are telling us and taking action on it. You don't need an external guru to become the best version of yourself. In fact, I think there's so much of fear-based marketing going on and kind of creating dependency of people on health professionals and gurus and coaches and mentors and so forth. And there is totally a place for that, to find guidance, especially when you feel on a plateau. That's when I recognize, okay, cool, I do need someone else's external perception here. But in saying that, you can also totally do your own transformation on your own, because essentially it's good to get outside tips, but no one will ever know your body as well as you do, and it's literally all inside here. So learn to listen, start to listen, tune in, and elevate. Beautiful people, thank you so much for having me join down here once more. Enjoy the rest of your fantastic week, and I really can't wait to see you shine. Until next time.